So in most fantasy worlds, elves are oftentimes depicted as beings of exceptional grace, wisdom, bust sizes in both directions, and most notably, magical prowess. And here's how to explain this with the very design of elves. Central to their very magical abilities could be a unique physical feature: their long pointed ears. And these elven ears could serve as a conduit for mana from the outside. And as you know, mana is the fundamental essence of magic, a pervasive, ethereal energy that flows through the fabric of many fantasy worlds. It is the lifeblood of magic, so to say, the fuel. An invisible force that is always present in, depending on the place, different concentrations, but that can be harnessed to perform feats that defy natural laws, such as being exceptionally quick, having great aim, or being very good with magic. And most, or even every living creature, has at least some capacity to interact with mana, but the degree to which they can actually manipulate it would vary greatly. And this is where elf ears come in. They would not only passively absorb mana from the outside, but help focus it, and perhaps also help to store it. And given the size of elven ears, a lot of mana could be stored. So the elves would naturally have a very large, albeit somewhat vulnerable mana pool. And perhaps with some gemstone earrings, you could add additional storage capacity. And having this mana receptive organs from the very moment you are born would also make elves not only look, well, elvish or rabbity-ish, or depending on your tastes. Now of course they would greatly benefit from actually interacting with mana since the very moment they were born, and having to manage and focus and control it because it will always infiltrate from the outside world. And perhaps this is also the reason why elves are seemingly immortal, because they can fuel themselves with the aid of outside mana, so naturally they would develop an enormous amount of control and fine-tuning over magic, simply because they have to interact with mana for their entire lives. But this would also give them a unique vulnerability. For example, it is possible that captured and enthralled elves have their ears cut off in order to cripple their ability as casters, which would of course be their primary way of defense and offense, meaning that the elves would be defenseless and easy to control. And depending on whether or not it is possible to hear the ears of these very complex organs can grow back at all on their own, this would possibly also be one of the greatest crimes to inflict upon any elf. And perhaps this is also how other fantasy races were able to master magic. Instead of channeling magic to their bodies, the dwarves, through extensive studies of severed specimen of elf ears, would find out how the elf ear actually channels mana, reverse engineer the capillary channels that attract, channel and conduct mana, and that's basically where runecraft would hail from in this exemplary fantasy world. And since the runes and the many seams of mana conductive materials and the patterns they are shaped in will then cause a specific effect, runecraft would not only be logically explained in the in-world lore of the world, but this would also give elf and dwarves an actual reason to hate and fight another. As for humans, well, humans might have found out how to use their own blood vessels and nerves to channel mana, which might mean that they are still able to cast magic on their own. But without the extra mana from the environment, the greater mana storage capacity, and their shorter lifespans, human magic casters would still be inferior to elf magic casters. And of course, things like wands might actually just be elf ear-like instruments that were basically forged from wood and other materials that can conduct water, that can transport water from the roots to the very top of the tree. And so therefore these woods were modified so that the channels, the capillary channels inside of the wood, can then conduct mana instead. So just by actually doing something with elf ears, other than leer at them, A great many stories and power mechanics could hail from this very own fact alone. And with that said, now it's your turn. What is your opinion about elf ears as a magic conduit and as an object of fetish? Let me know it down in the comment section. And while you type, I say thank you very much for watching and have a nice day.